Chapter 21. Valueless Wetlands Made Profitable by Idealization. Strange as it seems, yet it is true greatly increased value can be given to land, even to useless land possessing no market value at all, by such ideals as love and service, the value of which are apparently so distinct and separate from the value of land. But values of love and service cannot be connected with the values of land unless the process of relating the two factors is idealized. Frankly, I do not know whether the father and mother, concerned with the story I am writing, recognize idealization or not. But one thing is certain. Whether they recognize it or not, the great success they made in using a little plot of useless low wetland to provide college education for their children is the result of idealization. The story begins 22 years ago. Soon after they were married, the father of the young wife gave her a little plot of wetland, seemingly quite useless except for water bugs and sandflies. It was on the Rhode Island coast off the main road, an out-of-the-way place. Even today it is 12 miles from a railway station. On the plot, the father built for his daughter a little cottage to which the young married couple could go for the summertime. During the next few years, 3 children were born to them. The mother and father were poor. It was possible to carry the children through grammar school and high school, but how to pay their way through college was a problem. The hearts of the mother and father were filled with a consuming desire, a desire to give each of their children a college education. Their minds were practical minds, hence they looked about to see what they had that they could use to help provide a means of sending their children to college. I presume when they first thought of the wetland at the seashore and a little cottage there in the out-of-the-way place, it seemed only an object of expense to them, certainly not a means of an income sufficient to provide 3 college educations. But they did something with this real thing they had. They idealized it. They may have done this consciously, they may have done it unconsciously, but they did it. Instead of thinking of a land as an out-of-the-way wet place to which few people wish to go, they idealized it as a place of peaceful seclusion to which a certain class of people would wish to go for a rest. Such idealization recognizes God as wisdom. It was adapted to the place and condition, to themselves and to their pocketbooks. I was there one July. There were no glass-screened porches, no casinos, no ornamented boardwalks, and no vain show of life. But there was life itself. The people visiting there were real people. There was freedom of action. There was fellowship in the spirit of love and service. Also, there was a rest. The father and mother had made it pay. They had made it pay from year to year, which means they had rendered such good service, such idealized service for the prices charged that visitors returned year after year. They have succeeded. The 3 children have been given college educations, and this in itself is sufficient proof of their success. And yet there is something greater than this. The father and mother each summer are given a spiritual education to 100 or more different guests who see God's idealization of service in action. Chapter 22. Obtaining in reality the ideal position you desire. God is all and everything. Be very sure of that. He is everything that exists, not only in the mental and spiritual world, but everything that really exists in the material world. If you think and plan in ideas and act in accord with them, be certain that you will leave out some essential factor of your effort and probably fail to attain that which you desire. In thinking and planning to secure the position you desire, or to create a position for yourself, your plans may not become realities if you fail to idealize and use any one of the factors. Here is a little incident, that of a young man who changed in a few weeks from making $35 a week and working 8 hours a day to making $500 a month working but 4 hours a day. I met him by accident. No, not by accident, but by God's design. It happened thus. One Sunday afternoon I went up into the section of the wild north end of Central Park where one can imagine oneself in the deep woods. I stretched myself on the ground and reclining against a big rock started to read. A young couple had come up from the other side and had stopped for a moment and begun to talk. I thought they would move on in a moment, so I kept still. But instead they sat down on the very rock against which I was reclining. "You see, dear," the young man said, "you've accepted a mere trailer. I'm just pulled along by business, that's all. I advance as it advances. But I am not the racer you think me. I'm not even a flyer. I can't even see a chance of spurting ahead of the others. But you're so wonderful and such a good stenographer," she protested. "Someone will find out your real worth." "I am only 1 in 40,000, he answered. Startled, astounded, they jumped up and looked round. For them from the other side of the rock had come these words. Well, you blubbering young Romeo, why don't you stop thinking of things as they are and work them out as they ought to be? It was my own voice, and it astonished me almost as much as it astonished them. I realized I had thought out loud, and determined to make the best of it. Getting up, I said, "I'm sorry, I'm here reading. You came up, and I could not help but hear." "Well, I'll be damned," said the young man. "A good greeting, that," I replied, an introduction also. I offered my services as business counselor, no fees. It is Sunday, you know, and I held out my hand. The girl smiled, and I smiled, and then he smiled and grasped my hand. We sat down, and I talked about idealizing things as they ought to be, of the necessity of avoiding dreamy visions, of pining one's idealization down to fit the possibilities. "But what do you mean by this idealization?" he said. "Just this," I replied. "Idealization is the process of establishing a perfect standard in the mind. That means considering every part, the individual, the means at hand, the place, the work itself, the other people concerned, the condition and the time, making a composite whole out of all ideas. Apply these to your case. You are a good stenographer. I accept you at your own valuation. But you are no better than 1,000 others, perhaps 5,000 others in New York City. If you can make yourself stand out from all the rest as rendering a service they cannot render, would you be able to command almost any income you pleased? Well, I should say I could. Can you, by merely bettering your work, make yourself stand out as a stenographer above all other stenographers? Well, perhaps I could if I worked 10 years at it, but then 1,000 others could do the same. That then is one part of the idea considered and discarded. Next, take up the idea of place. You live in New York City. How long have you lived here? All my life. Have you ever idealized it? No, I don't know what you mean. Well, have you ever attempted to think of New York City in a big way, to vision all the possibilities within itself and its relationship to the rest of the country? Close your eyes. Picture New York City with its millions of people, its hundreds of thousands of offices, its tens of thousands of big businessmen and bankers and shippers doing business with all parts of the world. Vision businessmen coming to New York City from all over the country, from all the rest of the world. Do you see New York City as a great opportunity for a business stenographer? Do you see the place as offering the great opportunity? Oh, yes, I answered, I do. Now, idealize your own work. I heard you say you are a mere stenographer. Think of your work as it actually is by picturing its ideal side. Picture it as a perfect whole. Vision its importance. Visualize what would happen if, in one moment, all stenographers should forget everything they knew about stenography, and all knowledge of stenography should be lost. Imagine the condition that would exist if all businessmen and all their clerks were compelled to make all records and handle all correspondence by handwriting. Has your idealization given you a realization of the importance of stenographic work? Yes, he replied, monosyllabically. There are still to be considered the other people concerned, those needing services, the existing conditions, and the time. What class of people is most in need of stenography? Why, businessmen, of course. Are the needs of the businessmen met every day by the work of the stenographers in their office? Yes. Are there any businessmen in New York City who do not have offices? Why, none of importance. When you idealized New York City as a business center, did you not vision big businessmen coming here from all over the country? Certainly. Do you know there are about 200,000 of these men in New York City every single day of the year? Oh, is that so? Have these men need of stenographic services? Yes, but they go to public stenographers or hotel stenographers. I don't see any special chance there. Well, neither do I, frankly. I don't know what the solution is going to be, but I do know that if we continue idealizing every single factor and keep them all in mind, we shall see a new relationship and a new need. It is always works out of something. Let us take the next point, condition of service. Are you ever asked to work overtime? Well, not often, but sometimes I will work 10 or 11 o'clock when the boss wants to get out special letters or telegrams for the midnight mail. Then the conditions of stenographic service are such that the businessmen do now and then, even those living in New York City, wish service which under ordinary condition is not rendered. This brings us to the subject of time. It is clear that stenographic service is rendered in the daytime. It is also clear that it is not rendered at night. Even hotel stenographers do not work later than 9 or 10 o'clock. Does that give you an idea? Yes, but nothing I can get a hold of, nothing I can actually use. Well, let's drop it now then. Think of all these yourself, the means, the work, the other people, the condition, the time, over and over again. Tonight, idealize every one of the factors. Don't omit a single one. Come to see me tomorrow night. Here's my address. The next night he came. He was a different man. He was no longer a stenographer. He was a creator. More than that, he was an inspired creator. A new idea, a new thought, and inspiration had come to him. This is what he did. He organized a stenographic night service between 9 in the evening and 1 in the morning for businessmen coming to the city for a day or two. For this service at such a time, he was able to charge twice the price of a public day stenographer. The service rendered to a big businessman who, having settled business affairs in the early evening, wished to get off contracts or letters or telegraphic instructions after the hotel's stenographic offices had closed, was far worth the price. By idealizing the time of rendering service, he made his stenographic work surpass and lead all other stenographic services in the city. A little home was bought and furnished. They're married now. Chapter 23. Advancement depends upon idealizing its process. Your work in the world is performed in one or more of three fields: work with things, work with words, and work with people. In each of these fields of work, there are thousands and thousands who serve earnestly and loyally, work efficiently year after year, and yet the advancement they desire is not attained. Are you one of these? If so, why do you not win the advancement of which you strive so earnestly? Because you fail, 1, to make yourself a leader in the work you are doing, or fail, 2, to prepare yourself for the field of service you desire to enter. If you make things better than others make, or if you make things more rapidly or more efficiently or more beautifully than others do, you lead them in the work you are doing, and your leadership brings advancement. But advancement does not come merely because of good work. It must be better work than others do, better than all others about you do. If you make yourself a leader in any field of work, work with things, words with people, you are given advancement. Now the next factor, your preparation for work in another field of service. It is in this that most earnest workers fail. To attain this kind of advancement from one field of work to another, earnest and efficient work, loyalty, skill, and years of experience are of little value unless you idealize the process of advancing from the field in which you are working to the field in which you wish to work. Even years of preparation are almost useless unless the process of preparation has been idealized. Take, for instance, the case of John, old John, they now call him. 44 years ago, he was a young machinist learning his trade. He was energetic, ambitious, and hopeful. He worked well. At night, he studied mechanics at home. Later, he went to night school and studied mechanical drawing. Yet he did not neglect his work. His machine was always in good condition. He worked faithfully and well. He turned out a greater amount of work per day and did better work than any other man in the shop. But he was not promoted. Today, he is still an expert machinist, and they call old John expert old John. He certainly had an ideal, a worthy, ambitious, definite ideal. The hope of his boyhood was to become boss of the shop and then foreman in some larger shop and ultimately the head of the department. Yet with all his skilled work and all his earnest effort in study and application, he has failed. But God is good. The world is good, and old John was given just reward for everything he did. He worked well and got the reward for this, good pay. He trained himself to be skilled and rapid in his work and got to his reward for this. When piecework pay was adapted, he received a larger sum per day than other machinists in the shop, in fact more than any other machinist in the city. He studied mechanics and took excellent care of his machine and got his reward for this. The highest bonus paid for the last wear and tear of the machine. He served long and loyally and got his reward for this, the highest extra Christmas bonus based proportionally on the number of years served. But he was never advanced to the position of boss. No man should be advanced to directing men, human souls, merely because he is expert in operating a machine. No woman should be made a teacher of children merely because she is an expert in shelling peas. Old John did not idealize the process of advancing from his field of work, handling things, to the field he wished to enter, handling men. All his study of mechanics and mechanical drawing brought him reward. It made him a better machinist, but it did not fit him to direct men. 3 years ago, a young man who then knew nothing whatever about any machine started the same shop, and now he is boss. He had the same ideal old John had, the same ambition, the same zeal, the same energy. He also studied mechanics and mechanical drawing and trained himself to run a machine expertly. But he wished to get into the field of directing men, so he idealized the process and adapted his preparation to it. Hence he studied men. During the noon hour he watched them. He got clues of the impulse and desires that impelled each to do things or refuse to do things. He watched the boss also to learn how they handled the men. He observed their success and their failures. He idealized himself in the process of handling the men. He learned how to get them to do things without antagonizing them, and soon, well, he is now foreman of the shop. Advancement comes to those who advance themselves. If you feel a little hurt and a little sullen and a little resentful because you have not been advanced, made a leader in other lines of work, look to yourself. First, idealize just exactly the type of work you are doing now. Second, idealize the type of work you want to do. Third, idealize the process of preparation necessary to fit yourself to do the type of work you want to do. Be truthful to yourself. Have you prepared yourself in the right way, or have you merely done your work well and asked for advancement? If you foolishly think you can fit yourself to direct people by making yourself an expert dressmaker, don't blame anyone but yourself. God gave you mind, use it. Not only effort, but mind effort. Intelligent mind effort, idealized intelligent mind effort, makes you worthy of advancement. Chapter 24. Making a solid ankle joint flexible and usable. In the matter of spiritual healing, let me make myself clear to you at the beginning of this section. Spiritual healing recognizes God as all and everything and puts the truth into practice, using everything but everything only when idealized. Spiritual healing does include material means, but material means only as a spiritual manifestation. I am well aware that spiritual theorists differ with me in this. They say that depending upon material means limits my thought of God. There are two mistakes in this statement. First, spiritual healing does not depend upon material means, but it does use them and use them only when idealized. Second, I answer that those who criticize limit their thought. For they first insist that the patient accept the truth of God is all and good, and secondly insist that he or she must not use the truth that God is all because some of God's manifestations are not good. Having read the 3 chapters of the section entitled The Spirit of Matter, you now know that denying the so-called matter is a manifestation of God is the same as denying that infinity of space, infinite attractive energy, and infinite activity are of God. In these 3 chapters you learn that density of matter is but God's infinite space, that solidity of matter is but God's infinite attractive energy, and that matter is but etheric aliveness and infinite energy ever present. I then, in spiritual healing, adhere in practice to the truth that God is all, and use not only God's spiritual ideal, but God's spiritual manifestation as well, that is, God as all and everything. Take first a case of healing that has to do with that which is most difficult to handle, the changing of bone structure. When I was 3 years of age, my left foot and ankle were crushed between the rollers of a 1-horse sugar mill. The foot and the left leg, way to the knee, were so badly injured that, when the rollers were reversed, it was necessary to lay me sideways on the board to prevent the crushed foot from dropping off. The doctors molded it back into form as best they could and put it into a cast. But the irregular bones of the ankle were so crushed and mashed that they grew together as one single solid bone. When the cast was taken off, I could not move the ankle at all. I could not flex it any more than you could bend the bone of your arm halfway between elbow and shoulder. As the leg from knee to toe was as stiff as a carved piece of wood, it was necessary to use a cane or a crutch and to hunch my whole body upward in order to swing the other leg forward. Today I can move the left foot up and down at the ankle as easily as I can move my right foot. I do not even limp. My step is springy and certain. Friends say that my walk is more like that of a man of 30 than that of a man of 65. Certainly with the small bones of my ankle grown together as one solid bone, I was compelled to do something with my consciousness of the solidity of matter. To get rid of the idea that matter is compact, dense, and solid is the first step in all healing. So long as you think of a cancer or a tumor or abnormal bone growth as compact, solid matter, so long will you doubt the power of mind and spirit to change it. Throughout all the ages, individuals have been healed by prayer, faith, mind, love, and spirit. Each such case proves that it can be done. Yet today, not one person of each 20 million of the world's population is healed directly by such methods. We cannot account for this by asserting that the world does not know that God is healed. We cannot account for it by asserting that millions do not wish to be made well by spiritual healing. If at any time during the ages we had held to the truth that God is all and known that matter is spiritual manifestation, the knowledge of the result of our spiritual healing would have swept the world, and everyone would now accept and use it. We have ideals of God, spirit, and spiritual healing. We have no ideal of matter, the thing to be healed. Our failures have been due to our partial and very mistaken ideas of matter. Some have tried to get around matter by calling it an illusion. Think of matter as an illusion as much as you please, but if you have a cancer on the end of your nose, deep in your heart you know that you cannot deny that your mind recognizes that that cancer is there. So long as you call matter an illusion, you admit there is something to be called an illusion, and that something makes you doubt to one degree or another the possibility of the healing. Others try to get around matter by denying its existence. So long as you find it necessary to deny matter, your very denial is your admission that there is something to deny. Is it consistent to deny the existence of the matter we call a cancer and then to turn our minds topsy-turvy in a second and demand the universal supply to be manifested as matter in a form of money and means of material existence, food, clothing, house, etc.? Demanding the presence of one kind of matter and denying the existence of another indicates a partial but not a complete conception of spiritual manifestation. And so long as our conception of truth is incomplete, we heal now and then, but not always. Christ never denied matter. He changed its manifestation by spiritual power, water to wine, for instance, but he never denied the water or the wine. He increased the number of loaves and fishes, and in teaching his disciples the lessons to be drawn from the miracle, he called specific attention to matter, for he emphasized the fact that there were but a few loaves and fishes before the change in many thousands afterwards. God is all. Everything that is true in spiritual existence is true in material existence, and vice versa. If God is holy, then all of his manifestations are holy. If the root be holy, writes Paul, so are the branches. Your body is composed of cells. Cells are composed of atoms, and atoms of electrons. Christ did not deny the existence of the body. He called it a temple, a place of holiness. Cells, atoms, and electrons are God in manifestation, just as much as thought is. God is all. How did I change a solid ankle bone to a flexible and usable joint? First, I idealized matter exactly as I have done for you in the 3 chapters of the section, The Spirit of Matter. Read them again. Read them 1,000 times if necessary. For the idea that matter is dense, solid, and motionless has been accepted millions of times by your mind. What then if it does take 1,000 readings to dispel the mistaken idea? Second, after idealizing matter in general, I idealized the particular matter of the ankle joint. I knew it was composed of cells, each composed of molecules, millions of them. I idealized a molecule as it truly exists, a mere etheric spherical space in which atoms whirl at tremendous rate. I idealized the atoms of every molecule of the bone structure, knowing each to be but a smaller etheric spherical space composed of electrons. Then I idealized the bone structure as composed of electrons. I idealized these electrons as being far, far apart. I idealized them as moving at stupendous speed. I idealized the electron itself as only an infinitely small whirling hole in space. Then my ankle bone became infinite space energy, formed and held together by infinite attractive energy, no more dense nor solid than infinitely active holes in space. Was this all I did? No, this was but my ideal of the substance of which the ankle joint is composed and of the process of infinite energy in operation. Hence, third, I idealized every process and means of developing muscles to move the ankle, and of developing nerves to move the muscle. I rubbed the ankle, pulled it, pressed it, tried to turn it this way and that, used every means of which I could conceive, everything that might induce motion. Never, however, did I for a moment think of it as dense, solid, and motionless. I knew that bone to be infinite energy. I knew that my soul could control and direct the energy, that it could form, reform, and create anew the bone structure itself. I knew the structure, as all great scientists were then beginning to realize, to be only infinite energy under my control. No matter what it was to be healed, your first step is to idealize matter. Idealize it as it truly is, made up for infinitely small, whirling holes of energy held together by the infinite attractive energy of God. Being only infinite energy, matter can be changed by the infinite will and spirit residing in each of us. Chapter 25. Healing a dying man of cancer of the stomach. This is a case of healing illustrating the idealized process of using God's intelligence discriminately. Many mental theorists also object to this. They refuse to think particular ideals of details, asserting that God's general concept of truth and perfect health are sufficient. Failures in healing would be lessened if we were wise enough to realize that God himself wasn't able to create anything of value in manifestation except by the use of discriminative intelligence. God first created our world by general concept. But what was the result? It was without form and void. Then he used the discriminative intelligence and separated the light from the darkness, the firmament from earth, the waters from the land, etc. Let us not be so unwise as to depend upon mere general concepts of truth. Hold them, if you will, till you are blind and gray, and your manifestations will still be formless and void. During the last 70 years, spiritual healing has been characterized by 3 distinct stages. The first stage did not truly represent even the thought taught at the time, for many persons, with but a vague idea of what it was all about and a wish to do good, set themselves up as healers. It was the stage of denial, and in some cases absurd denial. I remember well the time when, if one went to such an uninformed and misinformed healer for treatment for headache, the healer would say, "But how can you have a headache? You have no head." Then came the second stage of spiritual healing. In this, the denial became the less important and the recognition of the great spiritual truth the more important. When specific application was then tried, it tended toward materialism. Now we are idealizing every step in the process and making it spiritual. Hence it adds to, rather than detracts from, the great spiritual truth. We now come to the third stage of spiritual healing, the recognition of particular truth and a specific application of them. We are advancing. We know that all is God in action and practice as well as in general statements. Let me give you a case that demonstrates the effectiveness of specific application after the failure of general affirmation. It is the case of a man who was 35 years old when the healing took place, afflicted with a cancer of the stomach and said to be dying at the time. 4 specialists had treated him, and at the time the case was brought to my attention, he was to be operated upon in 2 days. It was his wife who came to me. The man himself was 32 miles away in the hospital, too weak even to feed himself. He had been ill for some years. First there had been medical treatment, x-rays, diets, serum, and when those had failed, he had tried suggestion, mental healing, divine healing, Christian Science. At first it seemed impossible for me to take the case. Affairs prevented my going to the man. I realized, although his wife was trying to give the correct ideal of his mental condition, she might not know it well enough to give me the information necessary to make specific application successful. I did know, however, of 2 of the healers who had been trying to help him. I called them on the telephone and found that they had been treating for health, life, and wholeness. Now these conditions were exactly what was desired as an end to be attained. The man wanted to be healthy. He wanted to be whole. He wanted to live. These conditions were exactly what the healers desired. He had faith, and the healers had faith, and yet he had not been healed. Hanging up the telephone, I turned to the wife and questioned her. She did not know exactly what I was driving at, and neither did I. But I found out that the phrase most frequently used by her husband were, "Oh, I'm so tired," "Oh, I'm too tired to do that," or "I'm so tired I cannot try." This then was the stumbling block. It was fatigue. As long as this consciousness continued, it contradicted the truth of health, life, and wholeness. For one who is healthy and whole is not so burdened with fatigue. I decided to use a specific truth strength as the truth that would lead to the end desired. This was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The wife left me, and I once spent a half hour and another half hour at midnight idealizing God as all energy, all vitality, and all life, idealizing energy and vitality and life and strength as flowing through that man's body. The first result, 23 hours later, a tall, thin, white-faced man walked into my office. His first words were, "Mrs. W. was here yesterday to see you about a cancer case." I looked at the man, noted his white face, and thought, "Good Lord, he's evidently her brother. The husband must be dead, or she would have come herself." I asked him to be seated, and I said, "Well, I am very grateful to you. My wife told me that you would center all thought upon my strength, and I am astounded at the result." If he was astounded, I myself was dumbfounded. The man had literally picked up his bed and walked, had dressed himself with little help, and had come 32 miles by train to see me. My treatment was not one bit more of truth than the treatment of the healers who had previously worked for him. The one difference was this, that the wife and I had made a specific application, discerned what truth must first be brought to consciousness, and used that truth to lead to the end desired. I am certain from this and 1,000 other cases that there is never a failure when God is recognized as wisdom, when the true mental cause is discerned, and the specific application of truth is made to fit the case. As to the second result, there is no need of elaboration. It is enough to state that within 10 days the man was at work and that the healing was permanent.